Serious, rural folk, what is the most creepy thing you've seen or experienced? I was in northern Wisconsin with my family as a kid. While I was up there I went on a little hike with my brother and dad, just sorta going through some woods. Ended up emerging from them onto someone's property, and the dude there saw us. Came up with his kid and asked the obvious, "So what you doing on my property?" My dad just apologized and said we were hiking and that he shouldn't have been so careless. We went back quickly, and while the encounter was odd, it didn't feel tense or anything. My brother and I also learned a good lesson about respecting private property. However, dude we encountered was apparently not satisfied. I get it to some degree. If I lived outside an urban area I'd be sus too if someone emerges from the forest onto my property. Things got weird though. The guy we encountered actually got some goon who either worked for or was related to him to track us back to our cabin. About 5 minutes after we got back and started to make lunch, this goon literally walks inside the cabin and begins to talk about how we were caught trespassing. He wasn't yelling or angry or anything, but it was still pretty jarring having some camo wearing guy that you've never seen before to just barge into your grandparents' house. He didn't have a lot of time to say much because our grandparents owned a few guns, mostly antiques though, and sure enough one got pulled on him. Our grandma held this guy up and actually apologized again for the prior instance of trespassing. Then she started to yell at him though for following us, trespassing on our property, and straight up coming inside uninvited, and then he left. Was a really weird encounter. Have talked to my dad and brother about it on occasion though, so it wasn't a dream or my imagination. Either way, don't trespass. That's the lesson I learned. Yeah, kind of hard to stand your ground about trespassing by trespassing. Australia has a reputation for scary animals, but people don't ever talk about the sounds you hear. The cutest, most fluffy, sweet-faced little animals make demon noises in the dark. Our birds scream. Possums sound horror movie noises. Koalas sound like giant monsters. All of these are completely harmless. Generally the dangerous animals are, coincidentally, the ones you can't hear. A friend of mine lived in a semi-rural area growing up. One night the cops knocked on her door and warned her that they were looking for a possibly violent fugitive. Told her they'd check her property and that she should lock up and be wary. It wasn't until some time later that she found out the full story. The fugitive had been caught sexually assaulting a horse in a local stable. In the ensuing panic, the horse's leg was broken and the man got away. He was found 2 days later hiding in a stormwater drain. I choked on my water. My family lives in an old farmhouse, surrounded by a lake, field and forest. No neighbors nearby. No reason for outsiders being near. It's a dead-end road. This happened to my aunt when she was dog sitting. She wakes up in the middle of the night to some noises. Our dog was less than helpful guard dog and she didn't alert her at all. Aunt sees several people outside with flashlights, walking around the yard. She panics and immediately puts on all the lights and the people escape. She called the cops but it would have taken them an hour to get there. Nothing was taken but sure scared the heck out of my aunt. Weird people with flashlights aside, it sounds like a really idyllic place. The blood-curdling scream of something being killed by coyotes, then all of a sudden it stops and there's dead silence. Just a few weeks ago just had a black snake wrapped on my outside doorknob when I opened it. I guess it was trying to get to the nest of flycatchers beneath the porch roof. Usually more of the stuff you can hear but can't see that does it for me. Once you see it and know what's making the sound it's usually less worrisome. Along the same vein, I suggest having peacocks around your yard, just to mess with visitors. They make some very weird, very loud noises. My uncle used to live way out in the country on a plot he said was a little less than 8 acres. His closest neighbors weren't terribly far away, within quick driving distance, but also just far enough that walking wasn't very viable. Anyways, I spent my 8th grade summer there and he had one story that scared the crap out of me back then. He had an array of animals on the farm. 3 hunting dogs, pigeons, dozens of chickens, other various birds, a few goats and a lone horse. And every night he would make his rounds through his farm just to make sure everybody was where they were supposed to be and that everything was locked up. One night as he's walking back to his house, his dogs start going wild. He initially doesn't give care to it and continues on his way, but his dogs are just relentlessly barking. He points his flashlight around and doesn't see anything. He gets to the back door of his house. His dog's still barking, and so he turns around one last time. Way out in his fields, he says he does see what looks like a moving shadow. He automatically assumes it's a coyote or some other wild animal and just goes inside. The next night, as he goes out to make his rounds, he said he was immediately stopped as he spotted some sort of shadowy figure just a little distance away from his barn. He didn't say anything, but he did take out his gun. Again, his initial thought was maybe a coyote trying to get his chickens. However, as he took a few steps, he said the figure suddenly stood up, almost human-like, and ran into the field, covered in darkness. He said he was so startled he just froze for a moment before yelling out, "Hey." He didn't give chase to whatever or whoever it was. He did say that for about a week after, his dogs would go ballistic at night, but he never saw the figure again. When he was telling me the story, he said that it probably could have just been a transient, but I don't know. The dude lived in the middle of nowhere and had to drive like 40 minutes to shop. Seems incredibly bizarre for some random homeless to even be in that area. He said it could have also been a black bear, but I don't know either. He wasn't even close to the kind of area I would think black bears inhabit. Dude lived in a rural country farming area, not anywhere remotely close to mountains, forests, etc. When I was a child, 2 of my friends and I decided to explore around an abandoned house that was down the road from us. Typical abandoned house look, paint peeling off everywhere with exposed wood in some spots, plants vines overgrown, broken windows, roof tiles missing here and there. Well, we walked inside and it matched the outside. Cupboards broken, floorboards splintered and cracked. Other than the place being extremely empty, we didn't really get any scary vibes from it. Nothing really stood out to us as paranormal as we'd expect. So we leave the house mildly disappointed. We're walking alongside of one of the windows when this very well-dressed, well-groomed man, maybe in his 60s, wearing a black dress coat, white shirt and black tie, comes into view. We didn't see him inside, never heard anything, yet here was this man just staring at us blankly through the window. Friends and I booked it as fast as we ever ran out of there and back home. It probably was just one of the property owners that just happened to be inside the same day we were. There were a few rooms we didn't go in, but good god, that scared the crap out of us, lol. A few years later, the local fire department burned the place down in a controlled burn. So if it was paranormal, well, it's gone now, lol. If they burned it down on a couple of years, it means the place has been abandoned for a long time and probably the owners were not found. Grew up in a very rural area of Kentucky on a property that was about 75 combined acres of woods and empty fields out a dead end, 1-lane road. One night when I was a kid, I was sent to take the trash out to the dumpster after dark. The dumpster was already at the bottom of the driveway. About the time I reached the dumpster, I heard the most blood-curdling scream I have ever heard. Like a woman was being brutally murdered right in my ear. I flew back to the house and had a full-on come apart, crying and telling my dad to get a gun. Fox screams will make your blood run cold. I live across the street from a golf course, located in a medium-sized city. They had a fox in heat a couple of years ago. Poor cops were flooded with calls. Used to live in rural Philippines in a tiny fishing village in Tinambacan. Right next to our house was a fenced-off lot that had been overgrown and a really broken-down house. It always looked really creepy at night and kids in the neighborhood told me it was haunted. From our rooftop you could look into the lot. One night I was looking at it, and I saw a strange blue glow coming from inside and shadows moving across the windows. I couldn't place it at all and didn't hear any noise, no people speaking or any indication of what was causing it. Really scared me. I brought it up to my family and they told me drag queens were squatting there overnight so that they could attend a nearby disco. So, that was relieving. I live in a fairly rural part of NJ surrounded by forest and hills. One night in high school, my friends and I were driving down one of the local back roads to find a place to chill and smoke. As we're driving, a deer jumps out in front of the car, as they normally do. This time though, as we slowed down, the deer turned around back the way it came, walked up to a tree, and then proceeded to bash its head in on the tree in one hit and fall dead. It didn't run into the tree, it walked over and then slammed its head into it. It was the weirdest behavior we've ever seen. Could have been rabies but was really freaky. Unsettled all of us and we decided to go back and smoke at my friend's house. Also fox screams. Holy heck, does it sound like murder? Chronic wasting disease maybe. Grew up spending a ton of time in the Colorado Rockies. In college, a friend and I were on a weekend backpacking trip up in National Forest land, about 300 yards off trail, when we stumbled across a mostly buried bunker someone had made. Think a 20-foot long tough shed, buried up to its roof. We only noticed it because sun glinted off one of two small windows in the roof, which had been deliberately covered with brush tree litter. Looking through the windows, we could make out a cot, buckets and tubs of food and supplies, etc. Found the door, concealed partially buried, which had a heavy padlock securing it. Noped out of there with a quickness. Didn't want to run into whoever had built the place. Definitely a doomsday prepper. One night I grabbed my son's toy night vision goggles to see if they even worked. If they did, maybe we could see what was making all the weird howling noises in the woods for the last 2 nights. So I looked across the yard into the woods and there were so many eyes. So many eyes. They were everywhere. In one case there was a grouping of 3 eyes. I had myself convinced it was just a opossum with its baby and I couldn't see the other eye, but then they all blinked at the same time. I have never ever used night vision to look in the woods again. Whatever deformity was there can have its space. People assume living in the country is quiet and peaceful. It's peaceful, but rarely quiet. A pack of coyotes howling can sound like crying babies. I know what it is, but it still freaks me out when I'm home alone at night. My grandparents own a farm and it's pretty unnervingly quiet at night except when a sudden whooshing sound starts up. It happens unexpectedly, but it's just a SpaceX engine test 10 miles away. Live out in the country. Realized one night that we never got the mail that day, so I walked out to the road to get it. No moon that night, so it was pitch black. Just the sound of crickets and tree frogs. As I'm walking back up the driveway, I hear my husband whistling. From the direction it's coming from, it seems he walked out the back door and was coming around the side of the house towards me. I didn't know why and didn't bother to ask. I just went up on the porch and back in the front door. Just then my husband came out of the bathroom. I still get freaked out a little when I think about it. It was 100% a human whistling a tune and both humans were in the house. So a long time ago, I was at a friend's ranch style house on a little bit of land and it was time for me to head home. Walked outside and it's close to midnight, but the moon is almost full, so it's really bright. I'm parked back in the sticks a little bit, so took me a second to get there, and as I near my truck I hear like a low growl snort and this beating of feet against the ground. Super loud, but not as loud as a horse nor as steady. Just kept getting louder and louder. I get a little freaked out, so I run to my truck and fumble my keys getting them out of my pocket and they fall to the ground just like some horror movie. I bend over to grab them and that's when I see something about as tall as my waist round the end of my pickup bed. I immediately knew it was a freaking werewolf and that was it for me. So this beast just slams into me, knocks me to the ground and jacked up my elbow. And that's how I met Cookie the Great Dane. Apparently she belonged to an elderly couple about 40 acres over and would get bored and get out of the fence. I ran in to grab my friends and we played with her another hour before I headed home. Cookie became a staple around the ranch house and she always would wait for us when we pulled up. Side note, is it weird or has anyone else had interactions with unknown creatures and just thought GD, that's a monster? I'm fricked. For like just a split second? Seems like I have a bunch of those. I was walking home from my friend one evening. The path took me downhill through a forest. It was quite late, so it was really dark, but there was just enough moonlight shining through the trees that it was possible to walk on the path without a flashlight. Just as I was in about the middle of my path, I started hearing twigs snapping and dried leaves cracking under footsteps on my immediate right. I froze and looked if I could see anyone. Nobody was there. Then the grumbling became audible. Like a big creature grumbling just to my right. It was loud, and right next to me. I said a frightened, "Hello," but the grumbling and cracking and snapping continued. I was scared shitless. I've never heard anything like that before. And to make things worse, there were warnings of brown bears in the nearby woods. I was trembling. I somehow pulled my phone out, turned on the flashlight and shined it out in front of me. What I saw was nothing, but the grumbling continued. So I shone the flashlight down to the ground. That's when I saw it. A goddamn hedgehog. He was about a meter from me. burrowing for worms or god knows what. But the sounds it was making, it made it sound like it was a creature 100x bigger. I wanted to punt that little sucker down into the valley. So yeah, that's the one time I almost shat my pants due to fear in the forest. I live on a road very far away from town. I have neighbors but I can't hear them or see them from my house. My back deck overlooks a field before mics of woods. One night I'm out back having a smoke and most likely stoned. I'm just chilling in the dark a little bit of candlelight in the light from inside when I hear a sound that scared the heck out of me. It was a deep low breathing snorting sound. It came from the field but it sounded like it was right next to me. It gave me chills and I thought there was a monster in my backyard. It's pitch black and I can't see what it is. Not that I really wanted to. I went back inside, locked the door and googled the crap out of it. It was a deer. During their mating season a male deer can make sounds like that. I saw a cougar in person once and it was terrifying. Probably less than 10 feet away. If you've never seen a cougar before, you're imagining it too small. They're just shy of 8 feet long on average and their whole body is muscle. Not muscle like a bull mind you, but like a tightly coiled wire. Biggest meanest looking animal I'd ever seen in the wild and it was completely silent as it went past us. We just stood still for a good couple minutes after it got out of sight. Got stalked by a lone wolf for a few months. That was great. Never once aggressive to me though but he was big. I live on southeast side of a lake in northern Ontario. In the winter when the lake freezes wolves come across the lake from the northwest usually in packs and hunt the local wildlife mostly rabbits I think which are abundant. Well one year I guess one wolf didn't make it back across the lake before it melted. We had an early spring thaw and he was around for the summer. There's no streetlights on my road and my friend lives about 1 kilometer up the road from me. After work we'd go to their place for beers almost daily to be honest then I'd just walk home after. For weeks I felt like I was being followed stalked. I'd turn around quick and point my flashlight and once or twice I got a quick glimpse of yellow eyes. At that point I never seen one here in the summer. In the winter yeah going for a rip on a sled sometimes you catch a glimpse in the distance. Anyways one night after weeks of this happening I borrowed a trail cam off of a MNR guy we do service work for. Put it on the road not far from my buddy's place. After a few days I pick it up and sure fricking enough there was a big black fricking timber. This really freaked me out but I had solace knowing that if it wanted to attack me it probably would have already. All the same I started driving to my buddy's place instead of hoping a ride and walking back. Until one night I had far more than my usual 2x after work beers I say frick it, grab a flashlight out of my truck and start to walk instead of drinking and drive. I'm about halfway home. I don't see him at first and it was fast in my mind. All of a sudden his eyes got lit up by the moon behind me. The wolf was walking on the opposite side of the road walking in my direction 15-20 feet in front of me. I don't know what the heck made me say but I just kept walking and just said, yo as we passed and the wolf kind of just grunted and carried on. Every year since then there has been a lot less rabbits in our area. I'm guessing he cleared out a lot of the population that summer. I'm not any kind of expert but having had a lot of dogs and knowing that wolves hunt in pack probably made you a suboptimal target. If dude can go sniff out rabbits and be nourished through the summer without much of a hassle there's really no reason to go after something bigger not while alone anyway. Tornadoes. Them things are kinda sketchy. Seeing a town one day and then it's gone the next is kinda eerie. Town was taken down by a F4 tornado. Tornadoes are really interesting though. They are fun to watch, but the sound they make is kinda creepy too. Not rural, in the burbs, but my parents' house landlocked, which means it does not have direct access to the road. You have to go through someone else's property to access theirs. Currently, this is a parking lot that belongs to a park. My parents have kept their property natural, means they despise yard work so they basically have a house in the middle of the woods next to a park. I was coming home one night a few years ago. It was dark, between 10-11 p.m. I come around the corner to come up the driveway and immediately slam on the brakes. There was this tall thing coming out of the darkness, right next to the driveway. and it was moving. It was taller than my car and super skinny. I freaking thought Slenderman was coming for me. As I sat there in shock, my eyes adjusted. It was a blue heron, a big giant bird. It had come up from the creek at the park looking for food, I guess. Scared the heck out of me. When I had just gotten my first car, I was driving home one night around 10 p.m. I came around a corner on a very dark back road and my headlights shined onto a large stake that someone set up on the curve with a deer's head shoved on top. I was nervous the rest of the way home after that. My little brother and I were tossing a baseball around near dusk at the bottom of our property, 30 wooded mountain acres way in the middle of nowhere. It had gotten dark enough that we were just about to call it quits when we heard the single most horrifying scream we've ever heard, before or since, from the trees just beyond the edge of the clearing. Imagine a woman screaming in mortal agony, writhing in the most wretched torment imaginable. Every tortured scream from horror movies, war movies, anything you've ever heard. Nothing compared to this. Even now, decades removed from hearing it, the hair on my arms and neck stands up just thinking of it, and it's made even worse by the realization of what it actually was. A mountain lion. Full-grown female mountain lions scream loudly when they're in heat, and it sounds like a human woman being torn to pieces by the devil himself. To hear that, 2 kids alone in the dark in the middle of nowhere, was about as terrifying as it gets. Agreed. I wonder if that's what people thought Banshee were back in the day. Cougars are the worst. I live in a countryside. Recently there's always dead dogs in my land. I am not sure if this is a coincidence or something else, but someone is killing healthy dogs and dumping the body just like that. It's not a great sight. The smell is really bad. The dogs look bloated and it looks like their eyes came out of the socket. Your local dog warden would probably appreciate knowing this because there may be clues if someone is doing this. I showed up at a friend's house once, as I did almost every day after school. Like 13 years old, I rode my bike everywhere. I usually left it by the side of her pool in her backyard, but as I'm pulling up she starts waving at me from her front porch. Her parents had gotten upset with us for leaving our bikes up there before, but neither of their cars is in the driveway, so I cruise up and we head inside. She immediately locks the door and calls 911. She had been up in her room looking for me to arrive, as she usually did apparently, and spotted a man lurking behind their pool, very near where I usually drop my bike. I was almost kidnapped or like anything. I don't know. The guy booked it when the cops arrived and they didn't find him. So glad your friend was quick thinking and kept you safe. Scary stuff. A bit late to this thread, but I've never had an opportunity to share this story. My wife and I met in a small rural town on Lake Superior, and when we were ready to move in together we purchased a remote cabin about 40 minutes out of town. It was an incredibly idyllic and peaceful existence for 2 years when we decided it was time to move closer to family. We had packed all of our items except for 2 mason jars we had used for celebratory glasses of wine on our last night. When we woke up the next morning, both glasses were destroyed throughout our dining room. It was not like a normal fall with pieces of glass on the floor. There were shards in other rooms, on windowsills 10 feet away from the table, and some pieces of glass were ground into a fine powder. I cannot think of a logical explanation of what happened. Whatever would have created the force to do that damage to the glasses would have woken us up. I am absolutely at a loss of what happened and still think about it frequently all these years later. Cabin was like, well frick you too then. A mountain lion stalking me in the woods on a midnight hike. I turned my flashlight on and it scared it away, and my brother shot a round of his .45 at into ground a few feet away. Then we went home paranoid to death. I live in the countryside in the UK, just about as far away from any city or town you can get. It's all very flat farmland. I go for a lot of walks through all the fields. Last summer I went for a long walk and was about 3 miles from my house. It was super hot that day, around 33°C, 91°F. I was walking past this one field that was full of crops ready to harvest. No idea what kind of crop it was, but it was about waist high, bright yellow and looked amazing. So I stopped and got out my phone to take some pictures. I stood there for about 5 minutes messing around trying to get some cool pics and videos for Instagram. Then carried on walking. About 30 seconds later I looked back across the field and saw what looked like a person dressed in black. standing in the middle of this field of yellow. At first I thought it was a scarecrow that I just didn't notice when taking those pictures, as maybe it had blended in with the trees in the distance behind this field. I got my phone out and was looking through the pictures, zooming in and trying to see if I could see this scarecrow, and of course, I couldn't. I kept walking with this field to the right of me, and took a right turn with the field still to my right. What I thought was a scarecrow started walking, so now this figure was a person. A person dressed in all black on this really hot summer's day. Hot for the UK lol. They started walking towards the spot I had originally stopped at to take pictures, and eventually got there and just stood there themselves. I kept walking until I was far away enough that I couldn't see them anymore. It just freaked me out, as there was no reason for someone to be walking through this field. Only the farmers ever do it as it was full of crops. I was walking on the tractor roads in between each field. Part of me thinks this person had to have been laying down in this field whilst I was taking the pictures, as there was no way they got to the middle of the field in the 30 seconds I looked away. I couldn't tell if they were looking at me, but I really feel like they were as they just stood there. I don't know. It was just a weird thing to see, considering I was 3 miles from the nearest house, with no other people nearby. I've never seen a single person just randomly walking through a farmer's field before or since then. Just felt like a scene from Jeepers Creepers. Your story had me thinking about Jeepers Creepers from the beginning lol. Great horror movie though. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.